I think what's less good news is the fact that, as with the last 3 quarters, for the first year, we're actually now looking forward and forecasting. We think by the end of 2025, the elevated level of corporate distress in Europe that we saw in the last quarter, 24, will endure throughout the year. And that's clearly bad news. But within that, the story is that distress levels are actually, we think, on our base case forecast, going to improve a little bit in the UK, and the sort of bad news we think will be concentrated around Germany, which we think will become by year end significantly the most distressed area of Europe. I think the concern is that across Europe it's sort of elevated levels of corporate distress, but sustained. I mean, we've been doing our distress index back to 2001. And if you look at the graph, that's a story of sort of peaks and troughs. There's a peak of corporate distress, it abates quite quickly, then some years later there'll be another peak. For the last 3 quarters, and if we're right about 2025, we've now got this sort of period of elevated corporate distress that isn't reducing much, with the exception of Germany, not increasing much. It's a sort of enduring problem of distress.
We've spent a lot of time talking about the German story, and yesterday confirmation, second year of contraction for the overall economy.
Yeah.
If we look at the powerhouse around these export-led economies, it feels like it's structural and cyclical. I mean, everywhere they turn, the energy cost that's uncompetitive, the regulation that is keeping businesses trapped around green regulation, for instance, the cyclical side, China, export markets that used to be open to it, now are facing some tariff threats as well. I mean, how does Germany in particular think about getting out of this distress scenario?
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, with previous very high levels of corporate distress, there's sometimes quite an obvious fit, and the previous high was the pandemic, the speed of government response, slashing interest rates. There was a kind of rapid response, and you could see, all right, you know, here are the problems caused by the pandemic. This is how government's going to go about fixing them. The current set of problems, it's hard to see that kind of solution, but there is always, you know, there's always an upside case and a downside case. And were there to be, I mean, Germany's been particularly hard hit by the Ukraine war. Were there to be a settlement, I mean, that's clearly not beyond the bounds of possibility in 2025, a durable settlement in Ukraine would make a very material difference to Germany. It doesn't clear all the problems away, but it would fix quite a few that have been, you know, besetting it.
How? Because this assumes that if a war in Ukraine gets settled, then suddenly Russian energy product starts flowing into Germany. That may not be the case, right? That's a big assumption.
Yeah, that's true. But, you know, and you know, you have to do a lot of, you know, examining of the crystal ball to figure out exactly what a settlement would look like. And my words, you know, if there were a durable settlement, the words if and durable are carrying a lot of weight there. But you ask about, you know, what would have to happen to, you know, improve conditions in Germany, and settling the Ukraine war would be number one. And, you know, an easing of trade tensions with, you know, between the US and Europe, and of course with China. Better news on, you know, EV transition would be another one. And our base case sort of assumes that none of these things happen. But, you know, you can always construct an upside case or a downside case.